Welcome back to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton. I am Connor Williams, and we are doing the extra time live stream segment. I will be joined by James in due course, I imagine. I'll just give you guys my roundup as well of the game, my thoughts, and then when James comes, we'll get into the deeper bits of it, as you'd say. Overall, very happy, very, very happy. It's nice to come on, do a live stream after a game, and it not be one that we've lost. It's a very rare feeling this season to come on and have a good weekend, and it was a good weekend all round for us. Obviously, we won, which is brilliant, away from home as well, which is brilliant. There's still that good feel around the club, despite the troubled season. So that's good to see. And then you have, the teams around us losing. Burnley, who've got to play Villa again. So they're going to be a bit on the floor in terms of morale. You had Leeds as well, who now drop into the zone and have still got Chelsea to come. Burnley have got Tottenham next. They're two tough games. Then Burnley play Villa. We've got Watford, who I'm not going to say anything about that because it's not a guarantee, but it's Watford. They're already gone. They might just do it just to spite us because Watford fans have that weird obsession. Either way, they've already gone. So I don't know. Hodgson seems to be on holiday mode. Some of the players look like they just can't wait to get off in the summer. So, it's looking good. And then obviously the wider bit, if you were, Tottenham getting a draw and City winning as well to top it all off. It was a good weekend. It was a good weekend for football for an Everton fan. James is joining me now. I'll add him to the stream. You all right, mate?
Hi, Connor. You all right, mate?
Yeah, not too bad. Just saying about how good of a weekend it was for football. If you're a Blue,
we've had worse weekends.
Yeah.
Large amount of them coming this season. So yeah, I'll definitely take many of the outcomes from this weekend.
So it's nice to just be doing it on a win, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's one of those. It always seems to be when I don't do them that we seem to win. So I need to stop doing them. But yeah, it's fantastic. It's like I say, a lot of things went our way this weekend. So which I don't think we can really say that much at all this season. So. Yeah, no. I'm feeling a lot very relieved, but like I say, that it's far from done.
Oh no, and although it looks like I was saying, then there's a bit of a good feel around the club because I think fans have just realised the only way we're going to survive is to pull the players up as much as possible. I don't think it'll completely blanket over though. That looking back, this is a pretty. Hopefully lessons are learned, shall I say, from being this close to the bottom. But as for the game itself, give me your thoughts on it. Obviously, we'll go through the goals and that a little bit later. But give me your thoughts on the overall game.
It was one of those. It was always going to be a scrap. We scrapped for everything. But what was refreshing is that it's not something we've really seen in away games from us normally. We saw a bit more of it at Liverpool, but still didn't get nothing out of it. But this time we got the rewards that we deserve for a really, strong performance full of endeavour. And I think we needed to break. I think what's got me feeling a lot more positive about our prospects of staying up is that we've now broken the duck and, got that monkey off our backs, if you like, with the lack of away wins. So we've broken that wretched run of away performances and results is really going to do wonders for the players' confidence. I think you'd like to think that we can go to Watford now and hopefully win that one as well.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's obviously the away form has been absolutely dreadful, and thinking back, there's been some awful. The Tottenham one's probably one of the worst ones up there, just for absolute being torn apart within like the first 20 minutes. But like you said, we got a Watford who already relegated. Roy Hodgson looks like he's already thinking about his retirement again. The players look absolutely. I'm know this club far too well to ever get that confident that I could say,
confident,
we should, the dreaded words.
You can be confident, but not too confident.
Yeah, I'd never say the dreaded words, we should, because, you say, oh, yeah, we should beat them, and then they get absolutely turn us over. So I'd never be confident enough to say that with my chest. But Watford are a club that you've got to imagine the morale in that camp is pretty low at the minute. And the morale in ours, after, like you said, it's got that monkey off our back with the away wins and the away form. You've got to hope moving into it. It's the morale in the two are very contrast, one being down here. The other should be quite high up here, really.
I mean, I'm sure they will be if we, repeat the antics of the last couple of games. I know there's already a few words being bandied around about another sort of coach send-off outside Finch Farm tomorrow afternoon. So, I'm pretty sure if we really get behind the players and keep making the song and dance over them that we have done in the last couple of games, then, I'm sure we can really try and we're doing everything in our power, really, to keep their confidence as high as it can be.
Yeah, exactly. And afterwards, after the game as well, the fans staying and singing Spirit of the Blues for it was like 15 minutes, wasn't it? They stayed for after.
I think it was about 30, 35 minutes, someone said. So
that is incredible.
I think it was about 15 minutes in when Frank Lampard came back out and applauded them, but I think they stuck around for a little bit longer until literally, I think the police and the stewards at Leicester literally had to throw them out like bouncers.
I saw Leicester police tweeting, going, "Boys and girls, please go home now."
Time.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. I can't believe they held a tune that well as well. Bear in mind how many of them it was. Held a tune for quite a while. Like it was very impressive, and I'm sure the players going back on the bus must have been on an all-time high. As for the game itself, obviously Leicester, a tough team, recently done these. I think the last time was our game that we were due to play on way earlier on when they got postponed because of COVID. Even though I think it was only one or two of the players and the rest were at the darts. Talk me through Mikalenko's goal though to start with. Didn't think he had this in his closet really.
Didn't think he had that kind of technique. I mean, it turns out he did actually score one like that, I think, for Kiev, but we hadn't really seen it yet from him. He started to become a little bit more adventurous and a bit more aggressive in his forward runs, and I was really impressed with him in that respect. But I think he's had an opportunity on a couple of occasions. He has one in that Burnley game that we lost, and then he also has one last week when we beat Chelsea. A good chance that he didn't take, but credit to him, he's obviously working on his attacking play, and I was very impressed with the technique. That is a really well taken goal, the kind of goal that you wouldn't be surprised if a Luca Dean sort of player scored. We've often been moaned how he may well not have the attacking sort of flair of Luca Dean or a Leighton Baines, but he's really shown he has got it in his locker there, which is really impressive. And considering what he's been through and sort of the the hardship of obviously what's going on in his country, but just in general for a player to come over from over to the Premier League from a sort of lower quality of league and adapt. He's come on leaps and bounds from the first sort of month or two he was here, where he looked a little bit leggy, and he's come a long way, especially when you consider, again, like I say, the personal problems that may well be going on for him behind the scenes. There must be so much going through his head, but he's been an absolute credit to the club and a credit to his country as well.
Exactly. He's one of those, isn't he? Just regularly goes. He doesn't have banger after banger. He's just steadily increased over time. He's started off a bit, and then, like you said, he has a good solid game, another good solid defensive game, and like you said, recently he's been trying to get up there a lot more. I've seen a couple of games where he makes the runs and he doesn't always get on past two. There's a couple of times where I think Damari Gray's not seen him on the overlap, but the intent's there, and it pretty much sums up what we're seeing now with the team. If you work hard, you'll get those chances, and that's what Mikalenko's getting in abundance. It seems he's getting his chance week in, week out, and he seems to be winning the fans over pretty well.
Yeah, I think we always, as Everton fans, I think we've always admired those sorts of players more than a lot of other fan bases maybe do. That sort of unsung hero, 7 out of 10 regular, consistent performers. they've always gone down quite well here, and he looks like he's got the makings of one of those. If he can keep this up, he really has he's thrown himself right into it and come on leaps and bounds. He's only been here 4 months, and considering everything that's going on, I think it's incredible what he's doing.
Yeah, and like you said, there were big shoes to follow. Luca Dean obviously leaving, and the way Luca Dean left, nobody was happy with the way it turned out he left, with the manager falling out. Yeah, that's quite big shoes to fill. It wasn't quite the Leighton Baines shoes, but still quite a big shoe to fill, coming in, replacing Luca Dean. But it's worth saying as well, like when you've got, Ashley Cole and Leighton Baines on the coaching staff at Everton, you would hope that his attacking prowess would come on a little bit with those two there.
Certainly, I mean, you can't really go too far wrong. I mean, I'd argue probably one of the best attacking fullback and the best defensive fullback. So he's got both facets covered there, and I think he was really impressive in that game. He came off with a little bit of a knock, but apparently he looks like he's going to be okay, which is good news. I think Frank Lampard thinks it's pretty promising for him.
Yeah, which we really don't need, John Joe Kenny at left back again. Now we've got a solid, like you said, 7 out of 10 player there. We don't need
John 2 out of 10.
Yeah, exactly. Another player coming on leaps and bounds was the man who assisted his goal, Alex Iwobi. He seems to have obviously got this assist, but he's another one who impresses me game after game now. I think maybe Newcastle was the turning point that it's sort of everyone's watching him a little bit more now, but since then maybe it's a confidence thing, getting that goal at Newcastle, which was massive, but he seems to be a different player now.
Yeah, well, he's been, I think even before the Newcastle, I thought he was one of the most impressive performers since Frank Lampard's joined the club, and I think we've got to give Frank Lampard a lot of credit here, because I think you've seen a couple of players sort of turn up the performances, and it's not turned up in the sense where sometimes you get a manager bounce. It seems like a genuine improvement where it's improved gradually over time. It's actually players are performing better now than when he first came in. And I think that's down to, like you say, like you mentioned there with Mykolenko, obviously I think the coaching is probably I think he seems to be a much more, I think, as you'd imagine with a younger manager, maybe a bit more enthusiastic. And I don't think he could get less enthusiastic than Benitez. So, I think it's a lot of the times the performances of the team are a reflection of the club and the manager. But definitely the last couple of games, what has impressed me about Frank Lampard is his ability to adapt tactically, which was not something I was always sure he'd be capable of. But, a lot of older, more experienced managers are very stuck in the ways, and I like the fact that he's been willing to learn from mistakes. And the performances were, like you mentioned, the Spurs game earlier on in the season, and performances that were way too open and left us vulnerable. We haven't seen quite as many of those lately. Most of the performances have been relatively defensively solid. We've got we've ground out wins by 1-goal margins, and it's small margins, and when you defend better, you have a better chance of being on the right side of those small margins.
Yeah, I think it was interestingly enough. I think it was the other day, and I saw a couple of people sharing it, saying it's his redemption. But Carragher actually covered us on Monday Night Football and said about how Lampard's his last, I think it was his last 12 he was going off compared to his first, or no, that'd be too many games. It was the equal amount of games since the turn, and what's changed. And he was like saying basically we're creating the same amount of chances as we did when he started, but we're a lot more pragmatic now. Which I think you can see a little bit of, but we also just look like we're maybe it took a little bit longer for him to gel, because I don't think Lampard got the new manager bounce that is normally a cliche of football. But I think you're just starting to see a team work as a team now, instead of just individuals running around and sort of not knowing what they're doing, not knowing their jobs. I think we're now starting to see a real team gel together.
Yeah, and no, not a moment too soon. You just got to hope that we can do enough to get ourselves to safety. Now we've got 4 more games, and you've just got to hope that I think 2 more wins, I'd like to think, could be enough, but you can never gauge it, I think. But I think, like I say, the performances are sort of give us as fans as well a lot more confidence that we can go into some of these games and win them, because there was a time where I didn't know where the next win was coming from.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, there has been bleak, and obviously, I think that's the good feel that the club's got as well. Because obviously, the fans as well have got a good feel. I mean, some of that is just knowing the role of fan base and needing to get behind the players and such. But there is that sort of, I don't want to say it's the cliche of that, it's the hope that kills you with Everton. But there is that sense a little bit more now of there is a bit of hope left. Whereas about a month ago, I think me and you were on it, it was looking bleak. Like, we'd do the match previews and it'd look really bleak. We'd be there, like, don't want to say a loss, so we'd have to go with draws, but it was like,
Damn, we knew what we were thinking. And
yeah, I'd come off it going, don't know why I said that.
yeah,
it was bleak at times, wasn't it?
Oh, horrible. But I think certainly, I think around that sort of halfway point of his tenure is where it sort of started to. I know we lost the Burnley game and it was annoying and it was really distressing to lose that game and lose the way we did. But even then, I thought we didn't perform too badly there. I think even the West Ham game where we had to send them off, I think that sort of international break that preceded the West Ham game, I think, has seemed to have sort of seemed to be the moment, I think, where he's probably had a bit of time to do a bit of soul searching, I think, Frank Lampard. And I said that at the time that he needed to use that time to really get this team to work properly. It took a little bit longer than it took beyond that break for a few more games until the results came. But since losing to Burnley, it's been, I think, is it 4 wins, a draw, and a loss? 3 wins, a draw, and a loss.
Yeah, I think it's 3 wins and a loss. So yeah. It's, like you said, it's improving massively. And I bet part of that was, like you said, that break, that international break. Not a lot of our players went on that either, if any, while I'm thinking about it. Maybe a couple of, I think maybe Yerry Mina or someone. But he'd have had a lot of time with the lads as well and his coaching staff to work a little bit extra, which probably is in our benefit that not a lot of our players were off on their internationals.
But yeah, I mean, the performances this season, I'd be surprised if many national managers were picking them before that break. It was pretty wretched, but yeah, certainly the shocking performances we saw back in March at Spurs and at Crystal Palace. We haven't looked as vulnerable as that since then. I think the Burnley game, there was stupid mistakes. But, since the United game, which succeeded that, I thought they'd be pretty solid in that. I thought we were a little bit iffy in the Leicester game at home, but he seemed to sort it out mid-game. And then even including the Liverpool game, which we lost, I think the last couple of games have been a lot more robust and have been a bit more difficult to break down.
Which is what, ironically as well, is what I think was winning the fans over a little bit, as well as what Everton, obviously can't speak for everybody, but a lot of Everton fans I know want this sort of pragmatic, a little bit harder to beat. Even Liverpool, the media were saying how we were annoying, gritty, sort of winding up. Like everyone, I know a lot of Everton fans that look at Atletico Madrid and say, that'd be.
We'd love to be like that.
Yeah, and you're starting to see bits of it in terms of being hard to beat, winding oppositions up. When you watch Yerry Mina winding Havertz up last week, you can see bits of it, can't you? Where it's sort of, they're the bits that fans look at our fans look at Atletico Madrid and think, oh, I want that. So the majority of fans, from what I've seen, are quite liking the new Frank Lampard's Everton.
Oh, definitely, and I think it's all about the application and the grit of the players. I think to want to be harder to beat and to run for one another and to really show that grit. That's what Everton's always been about, and it's the fundamentals of playing for Everton. You've got to be a grafter and you've got to be hard to beat. At least we've not always swept teams aside, but we've always been a side that have been infuriated whenever we put in a very embarrassing performance, and we're not a club who takes pride in losing a game 3-0 just because we knocked the ball around. Well, I think that's why fans got really ticked off with Roberto Martinez towards the end, because it was completely against the ethos of the club to have that kind of mentality. And I think if pragmatism's making a bit of a comeback here, and I was surprised that Frank Lampard has increased in his pragmatism over his time here. I think that's really been a very pleasant surprise for me, and it's given me a lot more confidence that we can get out of this mess now.
Yeah, I completely agree. Obviously, we say for all our pragmatism, you can't get rid of individual errors, unfortunately. And Patson Daka's, I'm going to put down to an individual error. I've watched it a couple of times, and I'm not too sure who I'm blaming. I can't tell if it's Seamus Coleman or Yerry Mina for their clash in the midst of Daka's goal.
Personally, I think it should have been Yerry Mina to head it back to the keeper. I think that's what I think Yerry Mina should have shouted louder there. But again, Yerry Mina should really have intercepted the first ball without letting it bounce. So, I think both are probably culpable in their own way.
Yeah, and to be fair, he's a big lad, and Coleman takes some right knock off him when they clash as well. Yerry Mina's not a type of player I'd like to accidentally run into. Unfortunately, about 7 minutes later, he ran off for Michael Keane. We've touched on it, obviously, on the channel a couple of times, and I think fans are going to talk about it a lot more now. What do you do with Yerry Mina? Obviously, there's links with us with a lot of centre-backs in the summer. I think it's next. Is he on 18 months of his contract now or something like that? Is next year, isn't it? Last year with us.
2 more years, I think.
Yeah, what do you think we should do with him? Because obviously, he's a good player. Everyone likes him, but his body just seems to be the biggest enemy.
Yeah, I think if a decent offer comes in, I would consider it. I think I would, if the right offer came in, I'd sell. On the other hand, if the wrong offer came in and we were stuck with him, it might just be a case of maybe just seeing the contract out. It'd be a shame to lose him for nothing. So personally, I would listen to offers.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, you don't want to lose players for nothing at the best of time. Like, to be fair, watching the likes of Delph go out on a freeze, not ideal because nobody wants to see players go for a free.
Nobody wants to sign Fabian Delph, whereas I at least think that I at least think with Yerry Mina that maybe like a bottom half La Liga team, a mid-table La Liga team might take a gamble on Yerry Mina for a low price. I think if we're talking Yerry Mina sale, I don't think we're going to get anywhere near the money we paid for him. I think we'll be talking maybe 10 million.
Yeah, just because of his injury record, I think.
His injury record, people won't gamble on it.
No, it's such a shame as well. I think he'd do well in. I think he'd do really well in Italy. Just when you see some of the centre backs over there that do really well, he sort of suits that mould of just a big fella. Although I was going to say not as mobile, but to be fair to Yerry Mina, when he's fit, he's he's mobile. I think it was in this game he slides in, doesn't he, behind Pickford to save the ball going in, and he can. A couple of people have said it, like he's not fast, but he moves quite. Like, he's not slow either. He's really weird. I think it's because he's got big legs, to be honest, and covers a lot of ground. But I wouldn't call him slow. I've seen slower centre backs for us.
Oh, definitely, but like I say, none of that's any good. Them attributes if he's on the treatment table. So I think for us, we've got to have a bit more. It's a very important position, centre back. You can't be having injury prone centre backs. You can kind of get away with that with strikers and wingers, but you need consistency at the back. You need to have like a constant centre back pairing that get to know each other, and the hallmark of any team that has a good run and has a good season, there's usually a decent, solid centre back pairing behind it.
Yeah, and he's a bit like a bit of a leader of the team. He was given the captaincy when Duncan Ferguson took over, so obviously there's players react to him. And as great as that is, in the same aspect, you can't have a leader that isn't out there sort of like fighting with them. Yeah, like you can't have a leader
He's not
leading
leading them
from
into
deep
battle.
wing.
He's just shouting them on from a treatment table.
Exactly that, which unfortunately, as good of a leader as he is, his body's just absolutely. He must have like Weetabix muscles or something because he just absolutely, crocs, sadly. And then obviously the winning, what ended up being the winning goal came from Mason Holgate. Um, Nice to see Mason Holgate amongst the goals. I must admit, the last couple of games I've been, I wouldn't, it, he's been better. I was going to say impressed, and I am in a way in the fact that he's not been as much of a liability, in my opinion, as he's been known to be in the past.
Again, I think that's a product of the increased pragmatism and the change in approach from Frank Lampard. I think that kind of approach benefits our defenders. And I'm not saying that's fantastic because I don't rate some of our defenders, but they do benefit more from a more solid, pragmatic approach rather than, I think, the sort of chaotic approach we saw earlier on in his tenure, which really caused a lot of confusion and a lot of disarray at the back. And that's where we saw the 5-0 defeats at Spurs and whatnot come from.
Yeah, I think it's shades of Ancelotti as well. Last year, we were a lot more pragmatic under him. Certain defenders, Michael Keane, for instance, everyone says how much better he looked last year. And I think that, like you said, that proves it, where Ancelotti a bit more pragmatism and maybe hiding some of the weaknesses in our centre-backs.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. It's like, you sort of try and play as much to the strengths of your team, and our players they're not the best, but they're dependable. I think in when we really sit in and certainly make it a scrap rather than play open. And you see like Jurgen Klopp moaning on about this sort of thing on pragmatic football, dogged defensive displays, and it rattles managers like that because it is effective in nullifying opposition. And I'm not just talking about the likes of Liverpool. I'm talking about teams lower down the league. We can keep teams out by playing that way, and it works.
Yeah, and it also just at this point where we are as well, every point matters. Sometimes you'll be like, oh, well, you're never going to win like that. Sometimes just a point matters. A draw is just as important when you're this far down the bottom. And even goal difference, keeping clean sheets. The table's that
Not
close.
losing games 5-0, like that is crucial.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can't come all guns blazing because if you get battered 5-0, your goal difference, which I think possibly could end up deciding it with a couple of the teams. I wouldn't be surprised if goal difference ends up coming when you look at like what the table is now. We're a point off it. Burnley and Leeds are on the same amount of points. Obviously, Leeds' goal difference is absolutely horrendous, 35 goals.
Yeah, Burnley's is a couple better than ours, I think. We're minus 19, they're minus 17. I think
Yeah,
Leeds are about minus 25, 26.
35.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, I think it's that 7-0 thrashing they took to City a couple of months ago. But
That's
that
not
just goes to prove it. Sort of, if your goal difference is that bad,
it doesn't do you any favours, especially when going into the final day game, both sort of were hanging in the balance. You want to give yourself the best chance. So, say if you only get that draw rather than a win, you might still have a shot at staying up.
It's brutal. I think that's going to I wouldn't be surprised if they went down due to their goal difference in the end, or whoever does go down. But if it was Leeds, I wouldn't be surprised if it was because of their goal difference and they drew 1 point with us or Burnley. Another player who obviously is not amongst the scores and stuff, but another player that played really well who impressed me that the chat seemed to be mentioning quite a bit because obviously there was rumours earlier this last week that he's on his way out. The club are looking to sell him. Is Jordan Pickford. Really got a lot of praise recently. And again, I thought he had a really solid game, a couple of really important saves to keep us in it. Give us your thoughts on Pickford as a whole, and do you believe the club are looking to sell him? And why do you think that is? Because I must admit, I think this is one of his better seasons in an Everton top.
I think the second half of the season, I think it's probably been his best time at the club, I'd argue. But I think this might be an indicator of where we're headed with Kevin Thelwell as the new sporting director. Are we going to, Semi-Charm Life's pretty much nailed it there in the chat. I think Pickford would bring us a massive bounty, and I think that's what I think we've bemoaned it, especially watching on the other clubs in the league, the likes of, your Leicesters and your Brightons, who are much better run behind the scenes. I think if they were to get an offer, they couldn't, a very big offer from a top six side, they'd more often than not sell. But, I mean, personally, I wouldn't be actively touting him around because I think he's class and I think he's been fantastic here, but he's definitely one of those, and we're definitely a club who need to be a bit more ready to sell big players when the stock is highest. But that's dependent on us getting our act together in terms of our ability to replace those players. And I think that's why we're very scared about the prospect of selling our current best players, because we saw what happened when we sold Lukaku, we saw what happened when we sold Idrissa Gueye, we saw what happened when we sold John Stones. We never really replaced any of those players. I think that's where the fear of losing key players is, because when we've done it in the past, we haven't rebuilt properly. And I think that's the task that Kevin Thelwell's got on his hands, is that, some of these players, Jordan Pickford's 28 now, I think. So it's a very good time to sell it at a high price if the offer was right. And the offer would have to be, for me, a world record for a goalkeeper to sell him. You got Alisson and Kepa, I think, both in the 70 sort of region. I'd be looking for 80 for Pickford for that reason. In this sort of time, I think obviously Alisson's a class keeper, but if Kepa's worth 70, that's a bit of a precedent to command more, and he's England's number one. English players come with a premium anyway. So I think 80 million is a sensible price to ask for if a side was to come calling for him. If not, maybe even a little more. And I'd love him to stay as well. I'm not against either outcome in this respect. But if we were to sell him, I think it's all about, is Kevin Thelwell running things behind the scenes properly now? Is Mashiri going to keep his beak out and let the sporting director run the club in terms of the football operations? And has he drawn up a short list of potential replacements already? If Jordan Pickford was to leave, is there a replacement lined up? These are all the factors you've got to consider. I think, like I say, Pickford would be a good place to start in terms of maybe bringing in large sums of money to potentially rebuild the squad. Again, there's rumours, it's non-stop about Calvert-Lewin going to maybe Arsenal, but
Richarlison as well in the last couple of weeks has catched a couple of rumours, hasn't he?
I think Richarlison is probably the one out of the three I'd be the least keen to sell. I think he's the hardest to replace. I think Calvert-Lewin I'd sell. If the offer was good. Pickford, if the offer was very good, I'd sell. Richarlison, you'd have to be breaking the 100 million mark for it to even be considered. He's that valuable to us. There's all this, Declan Rice is worth 100 million. Well, he is to West Ham. So they're going to put that price tag on him because that is what he brings to the table. And in my opinion, Richie's that sort of talisman for us who we shouldn't be selling unless it is possibly 9 figures.
Yeah, which I think is a fair play. I think I watch a lot now, and it seems to be a current thing with football where, I don't know if it's because they go on that transfer market website or whatever, but people seem to go, that the price that clubs are asking for a player, they'll go that they don't want to sell as well. More importantly, they'll be like, he's not worth that. And like you said, he might not be in your eyes or in the world of football, but if he's your top goal scorer or works as hard as Richarlison does for us, he is going to be worth.
He's worth his weight in gold.
Yeah, it's about it's like the beauty's in the eye of the beholder almost. Like, players are worth more to clubs where they're valued more.
Exactly. We talk about Jack Grealish going to City for 100 million. I don't think he is worth 100 million, but to Aston Villa he was.
And that money was used to buy at least, I think it was like 4 new players, was it? To try and help rebuild that squad.
It hasn't been a fantastic season for Aston Villa either. I think they've underwhelmed a little bit, but it's still, they could still maybe regroup and go one better next season. And I think that's the approach we've got to take, is that even if it sets us back a little bit short term, that this model will work in the long term. We saw it at Leicester, like a couple of years after winning the title, they dropped to about 9th, 10th for a few years while rebuilding the squad, but then pushed for the Champions League a couple of years ago. So it is a model that has proven successful for a lot of teams at this level, and a lot of teams who the establishment is against. Let's be quite fully honest. You've got to play the system as well as you can. And I think that's how, you see the sides who aren't part of that establishment 6, if you like. That's how those sides are doing well. The sides that are doing well are being very clever with the money. They're selling players at the right time. They're bringing in the right players. And most importantly, I think that's where I might be concerned about potentially selling Pickford, or maybe not Calvert-Lewin, but certainly Jordan Pickford, and definitely Richarlison. Would be, have we got the ready-made replacements? Personally, I'd like to have replacements ready to step in the squad, get them settled into the club before they have to make that step up and be the main striker. We saw it a bit like Calvert-Lewin was sort of thrust into it because Lukaku left. We took a few years to actually grow into the role because he was a kid and he wasn't ready. I think that
he was playing at wing back at one point.
I
think he was playing at right wing back as well under one point under Koeman, wasn't he?
That also, yeah. So you're seeing what we're up against there. We need to have a better football and plan in place, and you've got to hope that from the minute he was appointed, 3 or 4 months ago now, that Kevin Pelwell, or the new director, is sort of laying out his own little blueprint of what's going to happen if, potentially lining up sales of players in maybe if not this window, possibly the next window. These players are obviously valued by other clubs and have potential suitors, so it may be time. You've got to pick the right time to cash in, but you've got to have the infrastructure in place and the personnel in place ready to step up when those players leave. And I think in the past we've had that. I think certainly under David Moyes, perhaps, when we lost a good player, we already had someone who could, at least for the time being, hold the fort until we got a proper replacement in. That's something we've had since.
No, and under Moyes as well, it'd always be some unearthed gem as well from some, from the Belgian, when we got Fellaini from the Belgian league. Could you imagine? Imagine it now. It seems almost daft that someone would buy someone from the Belgian league and then end up, So I think there's that sort of with us. I can't help but think we've moved into they have to have been played in the Premier League at some point in their career.
I don't get it, because all the players who we sign have been in the Premier League and failed in the Premier League. It always seems to be players who did rubbish at Manchester United, and Manchester United themselves aren't doing great. I'd balk if we went near a Jesse Lingard type player or anything like that. I'm not too thrilled that we brought Dele Alli in, but
same.
Again, these are the transfer decisions we've got to start getting right. We need to get players into the club, young up and coming players, even if they come in just to be backups for the first season, and sort of prep them behind the scenes to step up. That's how the best teams like Liverpool do it all the time. They bring in players and for the first season they're like subs, and then they sort of get eased into the team. Like I think Robertson, they did it with him. Like he was behind Antonio Moreno for a season before he had about half a season on the bench before that. And same now, I think that Kanate is doing quite well for them, and he's been on the bench for most of this season. They signed him for big money in the summer, but he's been a sub. And it keeps players, especially when you buy good players for big money, it helps keep them in the background and keep them off the firing line so you don't get the media on the backs going, oh, 30 million flop.
A bit like Grealish at City now. You see a couple of like earlier on.
Similar, but even then with Grealish, I think he's been generally on the bench. I've found and that even though he was 100 million, that is probably a good move by Pep Guardiola. You might see a better Jack Grealish next season after that first season of being this 100 million player sort of wears off. That novelty wears off. I think Riyad Mahrez struggled a little bit in his first season at City, but then been excellent since. It's not beyond the realms of possibility that you bring players in who are quite young and still need to do a lot of adapting, but give them a season as a reserve maybe or as a substitute to really get settled into the club and get to know the players and ease them in throughout the season, and then maybe have them primed, ready to step into the shoes of a key player who may be sold. And I think the best teams, the best run teams are excellent at doing that. I think that is hopefully the model that Kevin Thelwell's thinking about. And if there is any consideration of potentially selling Jordan Pickford, I think it will have come from some sort of transfer blueprint that Thelwell's maybe drawn up, that we do need to start selling players at the peak and reinvesting the money. And hopefully we do, because, like I say, the establishment's against us in terms of this whole Sky 6 and the whole FFP basically not letting any other team spend enough to compete with them. So we need to find an alternative route. Like, it's even Leicester, you see how well they've done in recent years. They've been unlucky this season, but even they haven't managed to crack it yet. So it's a long-winded process, but it looked as if it was until they've had as bad luck as injuries as we have this season, Leicester. So I think that's kind of derailed it a bit for them. But apart from that, it looked as if they were kind of getting it right, taking up that approach. So I think that's an approach I wouldn't mind us taking up, like, under Kevin Thelwell. But like I say, it's all about getting that put in place and actually executing it, because you fear that maybe Marcel Brands tried to do that, he couldn't execute it because of Mashiri. But hopefully Mashiri's seen a bit of sense now, and he seems to have retreated into the background a little bit more recently. So hopefully that's a sign that Kevin Thelwell will be able to get on with the job at hand and give us that football blueprint that could help us improve in the coming years.
Hopefully, I mean, I just hope we move away from this sort of I'm going to call it like snobbery of the other leagues, even the Championship, for instance. There's good players there. There's good players in the Belgian league and the Dutch league, but we seem to be going for players who either were good 4 years ago or are on the downward. Sort of like Coutinho. We were all over trying to get him supposedly in the summer.
I wouldn't have wanted that.
No, I wouldn't even in January before Villa got him. But he was the one that if you said, "Oh, what's an Everton signing?" Adama Traore, I've seen been linked with us for this summer, and that's another one where I'm like,
not sure about that. Like, no. I actually wouldn't be completely against him, because he's an incredible extra dimension because of that pace and that power, but he just hasn't got the football brain, I don't think.
Yeah,
if he had done, he would have really kicked on further at Wolves, I think. And fair play, he got that move to Barcelona, but I'll be astonished if he cuts the mustard there, especially now they seem to be back on the up.
Yeah, I looked at it the other day. Apparently, he got like an assist in his first game or so, and then since then he's not done a lot. He reminds me a little bit of Theo Walcott, but a lot bigger, all pace, absolutely, run, can beat any man. But once you get to that byline, it's like rabbit in the
Can he
headlights.
cross? Can he finish? And I mean, in fairness, he puts Theo Walcott again. He put some. He had some good finishes, some good crosses, but it just wasn't consistent enough. The technical ability was there with both of them, I think, but it's the decision making that's holding him back, I think.
Yeah,
Very
because he's an
similar.
athlete.
Sorry.
Because he's an athlete, like you said, he's got pace for days. He's built really massively. I saw a video once where he said he doesn't do weights. I'm not quite sure I believe that. So you wouldn't want to be a left back, would you, and come against him when he's running at you?
Absolutely not. I think that'd be it is. You saw in the past. Like I think every time we came up against him, Luca Dean used to get absolutely roasted by him. We always used to have to double up on him. I remember like there was games. I think the only time we ever held our own against them was when it was actually Ben Godfrey at left back, and he was sort of toe to toe in terms of the physicality and the speed. But Luca Dean really used to struggle against him, and I think Adama Traore, I wouldn't be against it if it was a good price or a loan or something, but odds are it won't be. I wouldn't. I think we need to go for, as I've said, and as you said as well, more unearthed players. I think you spoke about Fellaini when Moyes brought him in. Moyes did that with Souček as well, and yeah, he's brought a lot of those Czech players in. Sufel, Kral. He's brought in like 3 Czech players, hasn't he? But all from Slavia Prague, I think. But like, you would think to go and look in Slavia Prague, like, and bring a Czech league player directly to the Premier League, and the same. But like when you brought a Belgian league player to the Premier League, when Belgian football stock wasn't as high as it is now either.
Yeah. Like I was going to say, like obviously now people are like, "Oh, Belgian football, this, that," and that. It wasn't when we brought Fellaini. It was very much how you'd look on the Czech league now.
Yeah, well, Belgium was at a similar level internationally to the Czech Republic around that time, so it was like Belgium's football obviously improved a lot with this golden generation, and what it's done for them. We've got loads of Belgians in the Premier League now, but I think I wouldn't be surprised if Fellaini was one of maybe the only Premier League Belgian at the time. There wasn't many Belgians playing around. I think Company went to City the same time, and I think that was about like they were the only 2 Belgians, I think.
Yeah, I can't seem to remember anymore. Whereas now, there's a good influx of them now.
Absolutely.
Right.
But that's what needs to be done. I think there needs to be a better scouting network out there. There needs to be, people keeping eyes on players where nobody else would think to look. And that's how you get players for good prices.
And you sell them on for a profit, hopefully, as well, if you have to sell them. So you keep yourself out of this financial fair play trouble that we've managed to find ourselves in this season, in the last summer. Keeps Absolutely. Us not necessarily always in the green, because I don't know how much the finances of a football club work, but, it keeps us in terms of that FFP in the green.
Yeah, I think we need to get ourselves back on the straight and narrow in that respect. And those sort of leagues, I think you can buy players at less of a premium. I think I was talking about better run clubs. I think Brighton are a really good example of this, finding players from nowhere. They sign players from clubs who you've never heard of. Like that Moises Caicedo, is it? Or Marcos Caicedo or something. He scored the weekend against United. I really wanted us to go and sign him. He was very highly thought of, but I think he was still playing in Ecuador or in Colombia or Uruguay or somewhere like that. And, obviously Brighton have been keeping an eye on him. So they must have been sent, they must be having scouts stationed out there in Uruguay, in Colombia. I don't see why we shouldn't be doing that ourselves.
Yeah, and it's not even just the smaller team; the bigger teams do it as well. City signed that Julian Alvarez From obviously he's from River, he was smashing it River Plate, to be fair, so you'd have to do quite well to not take notice of him. But still, an Argentinian league, Brazilian leagues, they'll have some good quality players because they're one of the nations, they're always. There's some nations that just produce a lot of good quality players. When you think French
Yeah,
players, they have an
per
abundance.
capita Uruguay is ridiculous.
Yeah, like there's so many South American players, and like a lot of them have good. Like a lot of them now, when you look at like a lot of Brazilian players, it's Richarlison being one of the main ones. The work ethic as well, the work rate on a couple of them that I see are really impressive as well.
Yeah, it's not. They're not just like show ponies. You had like your Ronaldinho, who was fantastic to watch, but you never always considered them to be a grafter. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
it's shifted, hasn't it?
you see a lot, a very different style to Brazilian players now. I think Richie's a good example of it. You see a lot of others. I think like the likes of you've got like Firmino there. I think even like the likes of like Rafinha and people like that. They all seem to have a bit more physicality about them. The ones who've made it in the Premier League have had the physicality needed. It's always worth a look. And Yerry Mina as well. I think we obviously signed them from Barcelona, but they brought him in from Palmeiras. So, those sort of players you can find them if you station your scouts in the right place. And, the best clubs are doing that, and the likes of ourselves haven't been, clearly. They've just been looking and using the Man United reserves.
Yeah, or who played in the Premier League 2 years ago, who's not really kicked on, that we can get back in the Prem.
Yeah, something along those lines.
It is needed for a change. In terms of the extra time before we close off, I'm going to ask you who your best player was and who, if you can, room for improvement.
I think the room for improvement one that's a bit harsh. I think I thought it was a really solid team display. I'd probably have to go with like Seamus Coleman. Obviously, he's the only one who played the duration of it who did anything wrong, which I think that's testament to the performance. I thought pretty much the entire team was rock solid today. On Sunday. There's not many others like with room for improvement as far as I'm concerned. I thought they can all improve. Obviously, but in terms of doing what's needed to get us over the line, they were doing the right things, and I was happy enough with that. Provided we come out with 3 points at the end of the game, then it's continue doing the same, like grind out those results and get the points. But the star player, I know he didn't complete the game, but it's got to be Mikalenko, hasn't it? It's that goal, and like we've said, even the games before this, the consistency of his performances, the standard of his performances, his determination is, he's come of age in the league very quickly, which is hard for young lads to do from, again, lesser leagues. We just mentioned the likes of Souček and, Fellaini, whatever, those sorts of hidden leagues. Not many people think to look in Ukraine, and we've gone and found him there. So, and he's turned out to be pretty decent. So, again, more evidence that we should be stationing our scouts in better places. Hopefully a bit more of that. But yeah, a good point from Mervyn Koeman there actually in the chat. Mikalenko was fantastic, but shout for the man of the match could well be Jordan Pickford. Again, an array of fantastic saves again, and got us over the line.
Yeah, I think it was one for Harvey Barnes. I watched the highlights before I came on to refresh my mind, and that one towards the end from Harvey Barnes, and then there was a flurry of chances. It's incredibly good at getting down really fast, which is it goes without saying. Because it's a lot harder for keepers to get down low than it is to get high, especially if you see the taller ones. I remember when City had that Pantilimon. He was like 6 foot something, maybe even 7 foot. just kick it low, and he was never getting down to it. But when you watch Jordan Pickford, he moves his feet incredibly quickly and gets down low incredibly quickly as well. So fair play to him.
Absolutely, yeah. I think, again, Jordan Pickford, I think he's been fantastic. And if he continues this form to the end of the season, then I think we're pretty a good bet to stay up. That's for sure. But yeah, definitely just keep up the performances. Like I say, the solidity and the team ethic, just keep fighting for one another, and the fans as well keep up the good work. The fans who've been going to all the bus greetings, see the bus off from Finch Farm tomorrow before the Watford game, and greeting the bus outside maybe at Vicarage Road, and in the ground. The supporters have been absolutely fantastic all the way through. I went to the one at Chelsea, but to keep it going on the road as well is fantastic, and it's a testament to our love for the club, and it's really filtered through to the players. You've seen the improvements in performances. Yeah, definitely keep the fan action going, because that's really given us an extra leg up. Definitely, I think we've definitely have proven to be like a 12th man of late. But in terms of the players, yeah, just keep fighting for one another and keep it solid, and keep grinding out the results, keep grinding out wins. And I think hopefully, I think someone put in the chat before, it's the maximum Burnley and Leeds can get is 43. So if we can, win, what is it? How many games we need to win? Three wins would be guaranteed, but even then, a little less than that might be enough. So I think hopefully, it's all about onto Watford now. Going, you'd like to think get a win, but definitely get behind the players and will them on, and I'm confident that we can win.
Yeah, and it's mad how much this table, for all, obviously we're in the relegation zone. Was it last week we dropped into it? Sort of, we just got out of it this week, didn't we? It's mad to think that if we play and win the next two games, which is Watford and Brentford, we'd be level on games with Southampton, and we'd end up a point above them, who I think are safe as well. By the way, I think they're safe, but it just shows how close the table was. This is Southampton that earlier on in the year people were ranting and raving about, because they were like a ninth at one point and they were going to do the European push. It's very close, this table, even though they're not in trouble. It is all very, very close, this bottom half. Leicester are just a little bit ahead of them, and I mean, there's worse. I'm not confident enough to say that with definite, but there's worse fixtures to look at when you're where we are than an already relegated Watford, Brentford, who've got to come to Goodison Park, and even Crystal Palace, who've got to come to Goodison Park, and then obviously Arsenal away, which is probably the more daunting one. But when you look at Leeds' run, there's a lot worse fixtures you could have on the way down.
I think Burnley's is probably the toughest run, actually, now looking at them. Leeds haven't got it easy, but I'd fancy Leeds to beat Chelsea. I'd fancy them to win the home game, similar to us. I think Burnley travelling to Tottenham and travelling to Villa, I think, is a lot more difficult than the other two run-ins.
Yeah, especially because they've already lost to Villa, haven't they? So they've got to pick themselves. That's not easy to then go and play them again. They've got to pick themselves up. And Tottenham as well, Burn. They've still got Tottenham, who are sort of clicking now. Harry Kane and Son last recent couple of weeks have been clicking well together. Obviously, managed to hold Liverpool to a draw this weekend, which is a good achievement in itself, especially when at times this season they've looked relentless in their title chase.
Yeah, I'd like to think I'm a lot more confident after this win that we'll stay up, but we've got to go to Watford and win, and then I'll be a lot more confident.
100%. I think me and Paul were on last week, and we were saying, realistically, you should be aiming to sort of, if you can't beat Watford where they are, then there is sort of questions. I think we were sort of saying you deserve to be down there. If you can't beat the teams around you down there.
Yeah, definitely. And we haven't had a good record in that respect this season, but I think with the fans behind us, the way that the fans behind the players the way it has been the last couple of weeks, and that sort of relentless will to win, the desire from the fans, that sort of filtered through to the players. I'd like to think we'll go up another gear, as we did against Leicester as well. A slightly better standard of away performance, enough to come away with the points.
Hopefully, I agree, man. I'm hoping the Watford will be the big one. After that, I'll feel a little bit more, hopefully a little bit more relieved. Also, just because I've seen a lot of Watford fans absolutely gasping for them to let Burnley just walk aside them if it means us going down. I've seen a couple on Twitter dying to watch us go down with them, so I'd really like to just stuff it at them, especially as well after obviously them coming to Goodison Park and turning us over the way they did.
Yeah, I think if there's any professional sort of desires in the players beyond the desire of the fans to get us over the line, there should be some desire for revenge for that.
Yeah, it's poor at home as well, was poor. And like I said, Watford fan, for whatever reason, if there's this manufactured rivalry in their heads, but like they're gasping for us to go down with them. So it'd be really nice to shove it
That's
to
strange.
them.
I've not actually seen much of that myself, but
I've seen it's like one lad who's really, to be fair, I'm not going to out him, but he's really good at like analysis and stuff. But he's desperate for us to come down with him and a couple of others as well. It's mainly people that we've got football players as their pictures, and then it's like, football Twitter, which is a bit mad. But hopefully by then it's too little too late and they'll be playing Leeds or something next year in the Championship.
fingers crossed. But yeah, hopefully onwards and upwards onto the next one. And like I say, don't forget, guys, anyone tuning in, looks like there's going to be another coach send-off tomorrow about 3:00. So if you are free, you know where to be.
Exactly. And on that note, guys, we are probably going to end it as well. Don't forget to like the stream before you leave. We'd massively appreciate it. If you're watching it back on YouTube, like the video as well. Comment down below your thoughts on the game. And also you can buy your Richarlison t-shirts with the pyro and mugs from the shop, the Toffee Blue shop, which will be in the link in the description as well. And you can buy Iwobi 1 Kenobi mugs and t-shirts as well in the Star Wars font. So go check them out in the description. And if you want to buy them, buy them. And we'll see you soon.